Hello YouTube, it's Barbara Jean. I'm making another video today, and I'm going to try not to make it as long as the last one, but I am going to talk about some of the battles I've had to face in my life. We all have battles that God has given us different battles to face, and we're all different personalities. We all have different challenges. Well, I've had a lot of challenges in my own life, and but we are conquerors. We're conquerors of the battles. He gives us challenges, and he wants us to learn to overcome. Sometimes it's harder for us to overcome some things than others. But I want to share some of my victories because I've had some interesting experiences, and I'm going to just read a verse here for you. More than conquerors. This is Romans, the book of Romans, chapter 8. Um, actually, where should I start? I'm not sure if I want to read the whole passage here. Well, let's start at verse 28, and I may skip through. Um, Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. For whom did he foreknew, he did predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. Whomever, oh, excuse me, moreover, whom he did predestine, then he also called, and whom he called, them he also justified, and whom he justified, them he also glorified. What shall we say then to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? He that spared not his own Son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also give us all things? Who shall lay anything to the charge of God's elect? It is God that justifies. Who is he that condemneth? It is Christ that died, yea rather, that is risen again, who is even at the right hand of God, who also maketh intercession for us. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation, or distress, or persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or peril, or sword? As it is written, for thy sake we are killed all the day long. We are accounted as sheep for the slaughter. Nay, in all things we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. For I am persuaded that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Okay, so I'm going to talk about some of the distresses I've gone through and some of the persecutions I've had to face, but how the Lord has brought me through. Um, the first one I want to talk about was actually it goes back to my show business experience. Actually, I've had several persecutions and distresses in the show business. Although the Lord gave me this wonderful job, it didn't mean that I was free from persecution. I had actually, when I got to the show, I actually started being persecuted in a way I never thought that I would ever experience. I mean, um, just talk about my heritage a little bit. I'm mostly black, but I'm also Irish, white Irish, and white, who knows what else. There's a lot of Caucasian in my family. Um, but there's also Cherokee Native, Indian, and also um, Chinese or Mongolian. So my family background is quite mixed, but mostly black. However, when I got to the show, there was basically two um, casts. There was a white cast and there was a black cast. African American and a Caucasian group of people in the show. And interestingly enough, I didn't receive so much persecution from the white cast members. It was actually the black cast members who I received a lot of persecution from while I was in the show. And in fact, so much so, it really shocked me. I had no idea how much they hated me. I thought maybe it was because I was fairer than most of them, although there are black people much more fair than I, and so I didn't. It wasn't until later that the Lord showed me that it really wasn't because of my skin tone that I was received so much persecution from the black cast members of the show that I was in. It was actually because the Spirit of God was in me, and they were actually reacting to the Spirit of God that was that the Lord had put in me. That I received so much persecution from them. Later on, they became more friendly when they realized I wasn't going to be angry over their lack of love towards me. In fact, they started asking me questions, and I started to share Christ with them and share the light and the truth with them. But just to show you some of the persecution I had, I remember when I was on stage, I think we were in rehearsal. We were on stage, and this is backstage, and we were getting to go, ready to go on. And we were in costume, and I had gone up to talk to a group of the black members, cast members, women who were standing around talking. And I walked up to them, and I was just trying to be friendly and just chatting with them. And one of the girls who was standing a little off from this group of, I think there was about four of them. She was standing off to the side, so she was standing away from the group. But she grabbed me by the arm, and she pulled me away from them and pulled me out into the hallway off the stage. And she yelled at me. She said, "Don't you understand? They don't like you. Don't you understand? They don't like you. They hate you." And I was totally shocked because I had no idea that this is what they felt. I was just being my friendly self, and I had no idea, and I didn't even know why. They didn't tell me why they hated me. They just hated me. I was just hated, and it was a shock to me. It broke my heart because I had come to Toronto thinking that I was going to be in this great experience. The Lord had given me this great job, um, and it was a great adventure, and these women, by the way, they said they were Christians. So I thought they would be my friends, and it turned out that they hated my guts for no apparent reason, as far as I knew. But and so this is some of the things I had to face while I was in Toronto. And like I said, later on, they did become friendlier. Um, I didn't hold a grudge against them. I just wish it was a shocking experience for me to know that you can be hated just because you love God, because you love Jesus, because Christ, the Spirit of God in you, you can be hated by others. It was quite a revelation for me. Um, but anyway, one of the battles that I had while in this show occurred a couple of years later. Um, oh, I became known as kind of a crazy woman. Basically, everyone warned other people when the new people came, and I found out later that they were warning them about me. Don't go, don't talk too much to her because she's crazy. She's a nut. She's a nutcase. She talks about God, she talks about Jesus. She loves God, so she's a nutcase. Leave her alone. So anyway, I became used to this kind of attitude of others towards me, and it was not a nice way to live. But God got me through. I spent most of my days, you know, watching the Ten Commandments or Ben Hur. I mean, that's basically I didn't have very many friends. People just kind of left me alone. And although, like I said, it was a growing experience, it was a growing time for me as I learned to lean on the Lord in ways because I was all alone in the city. I hadn't, there were friendly people and I had nice people to talk to, and I took voice lessons. I continued to grow in the Lord and read a lot of books, and so it was good in some ways. In other ways, it was very lonely. But one of the experiences I had where I had to actually battle for do have it was kind of a physical battle, if you will, with Satan. Um, while in the theater experience, if you know what a green room is, a green room in a theater is um, where you go to relax. You leave your dressing room, and it's like a community room where you put up your feet and eat your meals or whatever. It's just the place where the whole cast hangs out. Okay, so in the green room, there was someone had brought in a box of porn, a box of girly magazines, and they had placed them in the green room. And we had children in this show that I was in, and it upset me, first of all, that I'd walked into the green room and found these magazines in the green room. But it also upset me because I had to share this room, and I wanted to feel relaxed. I wanted to feel at peace in this place, that I had to deal with pornography, but also the fact that there was children also using this room, and there shouldn't be pornography in this room if there's children, particularly if children are in this room. So it upset me. So I went to the stage manager and I went and spoke to her. I said, I'm really upset. I said, someone had brought pornography and put it in the green room. And so the stage manager agreed with me and said that they shouldn't be there. I'll remove them. So she went and she removed the magazines from the green room. Well, it had gotten out. That news that I had asked these magazines to be removed flew through the theater like wildfire. Went through the whole theater like wildfire. And what was interesting was, after it had gotten out that I had asked for them to be removed, one of the cast members, one of the stars of the show, a black woman, so-called Christian woman, I was walking down the hall. She came flying at me, screaming her head off, saying, how dare you tell us what we can read? You have no right to tell us to remove those magazines. You had no right, blah, blah, blah. And she's screaming obscenities basically at me for telling the stage manager that I didn't want these magazines in the green room. She was yelling and screaming at me like a banshee. It was the most frightening thing. Not frightening. I wasn't frightened. It was just distressing. It was distressing to know that this woman who was supposedly a Christian was yelling about this evil in the green room being removed out of it, and yelling at me as though I had somehow slapped her across the face. And I said, you know what? You could read whatever you want, wherever you want, in your dressing room if you want. But this is a green room. This is where we all congregate. This is where we all need to be comfortable, and on top of which there are children in there. We are all responsible for these children and the influence that we have on these children. Well, she didn't care. She just yelled and screamed her head off at me. And I stood my ground, and I didn't care how much she yelled. And I said, I don't care. They're not going back. Those magazines are not going back. So I turned around and walked away from her. I think it overwhelmed her. I think because she was this so-called star, she had the right to say, I was going to back down and be freaked out. But I knew I wasn't battling a person. I was battling a spirit. And greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. And when you hold your ground, Christian, hold your ground. Don't be afraid of what these people think or what they say. Because you are greater. If you have Christ in you, you are greater than the spirit that's in them. And I didn't hate this woman for yelling at me. In fact, I had no bad feelings about her. I just really felt sorry for her that she was so disillusioned. Or not disillusioned, what's the word? She's so possessed by Satan that she couldn't even see, the so-called Christian woman couldn't see the evil that was just burst out of her, this spirit she was totally blind to it. But interestingly enough, the next day, by the way, the very next day, another star, another big name star, actually someone who, if I had said the name, you would know who she was. I would often go into her dressing room. She always brought her 2 dogs with her to her dressing room. She had a beautiful dressing room, and she always brought these 2 little dogs that were hers. They were the stupidest little dogs I ever saw in my life, to tell you the truth. I mean, I liked animals, and so I always would go in to pet and play with the dogs for a few minutes before I would go to my dressing room. Well, the next day I went into into her dressing room because her door was always open and she would always allow anybody to come in and play with the dogs. So what I did, I came into the room to play with the dogs like I always did in my regular routine, and I knew it was my regular routine. There she was sitting with this other woman and another woman, and they had this pornography magazine, and they knew I was coming down the hallway and they were waiting for me. So when I went into the dressing room, knocked on the door, went to play with it, they lifted up the magazines in front of their face, the pornography, and they were oohing and awing over the pictures. Ooh, ah, playing this silly game, waiting for me to react or have a fit. I think that's what they were hoping. But I didn't have a fit. And in fact, I just played with the dogs and went about, and then after a couple of minutes, I went to my dressing room. I think they were waiting for me to say something. But you see, this is the kind of stupid games that Satan plays. So I guess they were hoping for some major reaction or another fight or something. But you know what? If she wants to read pornography in her dressing room, well, she can do whatever she wants. But she ain't bringing it back into that dressing room. And guess what? They never did. They never brought that pornography back into the dressing room. In fact, the man who did bring that pornography into the green room came to me that day and apologized to me and said, "I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to cause all this upset, and I just want to apologize for bringing those magazines. It won't happen again." So another experience, another adventure in the life of Barbara Jean Taylor. So anyway, that is all I wanted to say about that. And so just another word, stand your ground. We're in a battle, people. We're in a battle. We're in a battle with Satan. We're in a battle not with flesh and blood, with powers and principalities. And there's nothing, even though we're going through distress, and it was a distressing time. It was distressing, people. But God got me through it. And I learned that you can stand up for us. When you stand up against Satan, there isn't much he can do. He's got to back down. If you got the power of God in you, he's got to back down. It's when you cower and you're afraid and you're frightened and you go, ooh, that's when Satan takes advantage of you, and he will slap you upside the head and stomp all over you. But if you stand your ground, you have that sword of the Spirit and your shield of faith, there isn't much he can do. Anyway, this has gone a little bit longer than I anticipated, but it was such an interesting story. So I'm going to let that go at this moment, and I'm going to try to make another video today. God bless you all.